As more streaming services hit the market with original programming, it's posing some unique problems when it comes to what you can show or say on TV. Senior TV editor Michael Schneider is writing about this in this week's issue of Variety. Mike, always good to have you.
What the?
Oh, don't say it.
I
don't
can't.
say it. Don't say
we
it.
have S&P here too.
Let's start with what is S&P? To begin with.
So it's standards and practices, and of course back in the day they used to be referred to as network censors, the folks who sort of look over scripts, look over content, make sure you're not breaking any rules, especially in the broadcast world. You know, there's the FCC, so there's certain words you can't say, certain things you can't show, violent scenes you can't do. But that has evolved over time because cable and now streaming, of course, don't have those same kind of rules.
Okay, so what is the issue then?
Especially with streaming, the feeling is there is no S&P, and that's a great thing if you're a creator, and also if you're a viewer, by the way. Basically, sky's the limit because there's no FCC regulation. There are no advertisers who are demanding that certain content not be shown. Problem is, that's sort of Wild West territory.
Holy shit.
And sometimes it does pay to actually go through and make sure you're not doing anything that might be considered offensive or might not be socially conscious, etc. So you're starting to see the streamers run into some of these problems as they sort of let creators go off and do whatever they want. Again, fine, but you know, there's something to be said for a little bit of oversight.
And there are a couple examples of this that you mentioned in your piece. Sarah Silverman kind of took it to an extreme on Hulu.
Come to expect it.
Yeah, and that was one that actually worked out fine because Sarah was actually trying to say something. She had in her premiere episode two audience members who were there completely nude. She was trying to make a point that, you know, A, we can get away with this because we're Hulu, but B, you know, this is a not sexualized depiction of nudity, and you so rarely see that on TV. The big issue came with the show 13 Reasons Why. It's a show that depicts teenage suicide, which of course we know is an epidemic. There have been plenty of studies that show that depictions in the media can actually trigger sort of teenage suicide levels as well. So Netflix put disclaimers on certain episodes, but later specialists and experts said, you know, Netflix didn't do enough. They didn't do their homework. They needed to do more. So Netflix went back several times and corrected some things, eventually pulled that depiction from the episode. But nonetheless, that was sort of a reminder that maybe if there was an S&P department, this conversation would have been held earlier, and maybe they would have avoided having to make these changes down the line.
Disney Plus just launched, and users were noticing that they too had a disclaimer.
Yeah, and this makes sense. And Disney's a company that's been around for a while, and they have ABC, which does have an S&P department. So I think these companies that are legacy companies getting into the streaming business are a little more aware that they need to be conscious of what they're doing. And Disney has been very conscious over the years. Some of its older movies have cultural depictions, including depictions of race and gender that don't feel appropriate in 2019.
Haven't quite aged well.
Have not aged well.
Right. It sounds like, though, there really is an incentive for creatives, producers, to go to streaming services and develop their content because they're not going to be encumbered by an S&P department.
Yeah, and that's something that Shonda Rhimes, for example, has said that was her big draw in going to Netflix after years of S&P on Grey's Anatomy and her other shows at ABC. Even creators from, say, the Disney Channel, the creator of Gravity Falls, one of my favorite kids show on Disney Channel, moved over to Netflix, and he posted on his Twitter feed his characters laughing about how excited they were to no longer have to deal with S&P. So yeah, creators are really appreciating this, and yeah, it's nice not to have someone looking over your shoulder. For the most part, this is a good thing for creatives. It's just, you know, there probably needs to be a little more accountability.
So do you see this going the way of more traditional broadcast in the future?
I think what you're going to find is as these companies mature, there's going to be a little more oversight. It's not going to be standards and practices like we knew it. It's not the return of the network censors. But as audiences sort of demand more information about the shows that are on and want to know what's appropriate for family, for kids, etc., I think these companies are going to start to look at maybe bringing on some executives just to sort of keep an eye on certain things and, you know, help sort of relay why this is here and maybe why this shouldn't be here. year.
On network television, you'll see the TV14 or TVMA, these kinds of signals to what the content of the show is going to be. Do you anticipate something similar for streaming services?
Well, you're already seeing that on most streaming services.
Okay.
So they are doing that. Now, they're not doing that with the same sort of oversight that the broadcast networks or the cable networks. They're kind of doing it on their own. But I think they're starting to add more of that information. There's actually an organization called Common Sense Media, which does a really good job of looking at content from a family and kids perspective and sort of grading what's appropriate at what age. It's a nonpartisan organization that some of the streamers are actually starting to use their data, which is really helpful. Okay, is something like The Mandalorian good for my 14-year-old? Organizations like that provide a real asset.
The answer is yes. The
Yeah.
Mandalorian is good for your
Binging it
14-year-old.
right now.
All right. Mike, thanks so much. Always keeping us informed. For more on this story and the latest in entertainment, head over to Variety.com.